everybody. My name is An Tran, and I'm from Superteam Vietnam. And yes, the debate today is, do airdrops work for creating long-term value? And this is the first time we're kind of using this format, so essentially we're the guinea pigs of this debate style. The way it's going to work is that for the first 15 minutes, Noam here is going to take the affirmative on this topic, and Armani is going to take the negative on the topic. And then 15 minutes after that, right after that, they're going to switch sides. So I do want to say that this is an intellectual conversation, right? Everybody here knows what an airdrop is. And the point of these debates is really just kind of like dig into these issues. So this isn't necessarily Noam and Armani as representatives of their companies espousing their views, but rather they're having an intellectual debate today. So please enjoy. Don't quote me, myself or any of these guys on anything here, but just enjoy the conversation and let's have a good time. So I'm going to ask the opening question. If you please introduce yourself afterwards, that would be great. The opening question is, do airdrops as an incentive model create awareness and visibility by attracting the right audience, or do they mostly attract the wrong participants?
Perfect. Thank you, obviously, for a wonderful leading question. I'm Nam, one of the core contributors behind BONK. I helped design a $1 billion airdrop, so that's my expertise coming into this side. When you talk about an airdrop as a mechanism, it's usually a token-based reward for people who are participating, whether that's providing capital, knowledge, or some other form of user action in a part of the protocol. And airdrops are primarily designed as large-scale bribery of an ecosystem. The easiest way to convince someone to spend time on your product or your protocol is a financial incentive. It's why you'll see everything from Uber offering you free rides to try it out, to referral mechanisms that are allowing people to bring, to earn capital on it, you bring other people to a platform. So when you talk about the right or the wrong style of user, I think the thing that you're looking for many products, specifically in crypto, is that any user is looked at as a good user. Many of these teams are looking to be able to justify metrics going up and to the right, whether that's for raising, whether that's for potential things that are going on for, tokenomics models or marketing incentives, things. You want to be able to say that you're bringing in new users. You want to be able to say that you're bringing in new people who are trying out these areas. So there really is no wrong user when you're discussing an airdrop purely as a mechanism to make your protocol more popular. I think the conversation evolves on the idea of what do you want somebody to do after an airdrop, which isn't necessarily the point of this panel, but where you can get into the idea of what the quality of the user looks like.
Do you agree with that? In the sense of, are there wrong users?
So, given I'm going to take the other side of this, yes, I do disagree. So maybe before starting, I think I have some fundamental views on just the general market structure of crypto that I think will help set the tone and context for this debate. I think whether we all agree or not, I think most people might agree that the fundamental incentive structure of the industry is more or less broken, where we get the wrong outcomes for the wrong people, where the maximum amount of aggregate value across all actors in the space is either leaking or going towards adverse outcomes. So I think this is fundamentally an issue, and there needs to be some serious reimagining and restructuring of the industry at large with respect to how we get the outcomes that we want. And I think airdrops is one kind of input into this conversation. There's many other ways that you can look at the problem: token vesting schedules, transparency in the industry, standards and agreement around token launches, fairness, decentralization, robustness, fragility, and anti-fragility. It's all kind of part of the same conversation. But to maybe tackle some of the points that you're making on, I think if you look at things like Uber and these reward programs. On the one hand, they look very similar to airdrops in the sense that, well, you do something and you get a reward. Whether it's you take a cab and you get a discount, or you order some food and you get some points and you see some gamified counter go up, or whatever it might be. But the key word in there, or set of words that is doing all the heavy lifting, is doing stuff, right? Be actively participating to get the outcome that you want, and that is like the really key point that most airdrops miss. Is as a general heuristic. Now, this is obviously overly generalized, and you can't necessarily say this as a blanket rule. But if you have to have a heuristic around airdrops, you can simply ask yourself the question: is it passive or is it active? Do you have to do something? Do something that the token creator wants you to do, right? Whether it's using a protocol, whether it's making a trade, whether it's marketing on behalf of a brand, whether it's recruiting developers or teaching people how to use a product or a set of developer tooling or anything of that nature. Like, doing something is the key thing, and I think that is really would be the core of any argument I would make for or against airdrops. But I think that's maybe a reasonable introduction to the way I think about it.
So blind airdrops, bad, right? Targeted airdrops, maybe good. Okay. What's your take on that?
I mean, the situation that you want to go into is, again, qualifying the individuals that you want to be participating in something. If I'm developing a large-scale borrow-lend to crypt directly off of the Camino guys, who I know are in the audience, so this is a little bit of pandering. The idea goes into how can you get a large amount of sustainable capital available so that users are able to utilize the benefits of your borrow lends. In that situation, my airdrop should not be targeted at anybody who's ever interacted with the program, right? Because the way that I'm valuing those users are going to be in a different area. I'm looking for someone who has $1,000, $100,000 that they can contribute into there. Somebody who might be good at social engagement or posting on things, but only has $5 or $10 of available capital, doesn't look at being a good user for my participation side of the ecosystem. Obviously, you can have things around pearl schemas or areas where you're able to develop things like earnestness for anybody who is experiencing that in Sanctum. But for something specific to, I have one key metric, which is, for example, TVL goes up. I need to target users who are going to be able to contribute to that as effectively as possible per unit of token that I'm giving out as a part of this process. So I would say that targeted airdrops, if you're a protocol where you have a key specific metric or series of metrics that you're looking at, very beneficial, versus a broad scale airdrop if you're trying to get people to try something new or to participate in a primitive that might not necessarily be widespread on an ecosystem yet.
Let's take that. Let's take even a targeted airdrop where you're going after very targeted users. Does it achieve the outcome at the end of the day? Because that can also be gamified, right? Like those type of people you can airdrop on, if you will. I guess the real question I'm trying to get to the heart of here is that, and I think this is something that Armani was talking about, is that can you achieve the goals of what the protocol is looking for without an airdrop, right? And maybe you want to talk about that.
Yeah. So we're using the term airdrop, but really this is just capital allocation, right? Whether it's airdropping tokens onto anonymous people on the internet, or whether it's organizing a cap table for a startup, or whether it's managing money at a hedge fund or whatever, it's all just capital allocation at the end of the day. And Nam, I think, was more or less hitting it right on the head, where it's all about KPI optimization. There's no, you don't walk into any company, nobody pays you to do nothing, right? You get paid as a function of the value that you contribute to a company. And it works in the same way or should work in the same way for a company as it does for decentralized protocols. You get value, or you should get value, proportionally to the value that you create for the network. The main difference is that when we're talking about the crypto economy, when we're talking about tokens, when we're talking about airdrops or whatever, is that there's generally, or there should be generally, some well understood fair, verifiable, transparent mining mechanism where the rules are codified inside a smart contract that says, if I do X, I get Y. And nowhere is this more clear, more transparent, more effective than obviously with Bitcoin, right? Where you create this client software, it determines exactly how to mine blocks, everybody knows exactly how to do this, and everybody agrees that this is, these are the rules, and if I do X, I get Y. And so, you have to ask yourself the question, what are the KPIs that I want? Am I trying to optimize for decentralized, censorship-resistant block production? Am I trying to optimize for liquidity and liquidity mining? Am I trying to get people to take and create demand for my NFT marketplace? It's a question of like, what does the network need? Right? If I'm making a decentralized social app, maybe I want people to post, and I should be rewarding posting. And these are like the KPIs. And so it's not really a question of, well, do airdrops work or not? It's a question of, are you building a sound system that has the emergent behavior that you want? And people will act more or less directly in accordance with their incentive structure. And the problem that I think that most airdrops over the past year have faced is that, well, there is no incentive structure. People simply just get airdrops by virtue of their existence because I'm friends with the right people, or it makes me feel warm and fuzzy inside to have this JPEG. But there's a reason why you should get value. And you don't get value, you earn value, you mine value, you contribute something to a network and then get something in return. And that's what allows kind of this massive coordination problem around the world to be solved with the tools kind of inherent in the crypto economy. And that's really, I think, the challenge to solve.
Definitely. Okay. I guess here, let me move to like some of the more recent large-scale like airdrops, like the really legitimate projects, like big name companies like ZK, Jito, Tensor. Would you consider these airdrops successful airdrops in pursuing their goals?
So there's a couple of different areas there, and I'm going to be speaking for these companies, right? I might not have a full understanding of what their specific goals were at time of drop. Tensor is an example where it was a token designed to reward people as a part of incentivization for trading NFTs specifically on the platform. You saw other areas where this had worked, depending on your point of view, positively with Blur over the course of its seasons. You've seen other campaigns where they're continuing to be drawn out and they haven't yet happened, or were fully abandoned, right? In the case of OpenSea, where allegedly there was going to be something that never appeared or happened. If you're designing a campaign specifically around volume, trading, generation of fees, that's something where you have a key metric of looking at NFT trading volume in general, with the caveat of looking at how that is performing in the ecosystem as a whole, which it suffers to a massive degree. So I would say that the Tensor token as an airdrop was successful at the point in time, but suffered because the token wasn't generated until the third season, where you'd already had two areas of significant rewards that had been generated by people over the course of a previous year, where the token or NFTs themselves were likely in a better position. Just when the token was actually released, it wasn't necessarily the long-term mechanism to keep it going forward. You contrast that with Jito, which is the TVL of Jito, right? The primary thing that you're going to be looking at, the use case of something like StakeNet, or the predominance of it being utilized in terms of bundling or being utilized as a part of MEV on Solana, is only going to continue to increase as user activity looks to continue to increase. Obviously, that's with the caveat of nothing bad happening to Jito. But I don't think anybody who uses Jito in a DeFi sense at this time uses the token, which is a governance drop or reward for people who are participating in validators and the LST early on. So I would actually say that I think Jito's token got into the hands of people who already believed in Jito, but it didn't hit a new audience. It didn't hit a bunch of new people who had no idea what it was going forward. And the Jito token itself has no direct relation to the way that essentially this is being, that Jito or Jito Soul is being utilized inside the ecosystem. So now that we've hit 15 minutes, I can say that I think the Jito airdrop is something that actually didn't work for the case of expanding.
Why don't you continue the affirmative? We'll let him do one negative, then we'll switch it up. All right? But would you say that those projects were successful in achieving their goals? I mean, I'll take one example, ZK, right? That seemed to be one of the more controversial ones because allocation, people were complaining about allocation. People who said they used the ecosystem didn't get rewarded. But if you had a fat penguin as a JPEG, you got a huge reward of ZK.
I think the challenge with some of those programs is that they were all, I think, points based. And so the rules were not kind of codified in a way that people understood. And so I think a lot of the negative sentiment that you're referring to, I don't know the specifics of the ZK airdrop. Honestly, I remember seeing some negative things on the timeline. I didn't participate in myself.
A lot of people basically said that they were turned off by the ecosystem because of the unfair allocation.
Yeah, I think that's just mainly a function of mismanaged expectations, which is maybe one of the downsides of point systems, because it's not entirely clear and transparent what you're farming.
Okay, now we're going to switch it up a little bit, and I'm going to start off with kind of a spicy question here. Some people say, that airdrops enhance, distribution and decentralization. You want to get your token out to as many people as possible. But others say it's really a mechanism to pay out the early investments. And it's kind of a way to kind of cheat code to kind of exit very early outside of people's vesting schedules. What do you say about that on the affirmative side?
I'd say that whether you have airdrops or not, the whole concept of investors getting out early is not a function of airdrops, it's a function of liquidity and early listings. So in my view, it's kind of an independent question that doesn't necessarily have any causal effect. But if you want to take the stance that airdrops create more market activity, creates more trading activity, which therefore allows kind of people to offload their position sizes during a flurry of behavior, then I can see how that can be a pretty compelling argument. So I think you do see this a bunch where people are planning their listings, they're planning their token go-to-market, because, I mean, I don't know if you want to put that on to investors, but I think it's a big reason is because for a lot of people, I think Raga from CoinList said this best, the token is the product for a lot of teams, especially like meme coins. It's really, the token's the product, the thing that people care about. It's not the product, it's not the app. It's certainly not true for everything in the industry, but I think what you're saying certainly applies to that kind of category of projects.
All right. So I think going into this in a different angle, right, on the negative side, when you're looking at the idea that an airdrop is something that allows a team or an investor or some way to get early access to the idea or to have an understanding of what these groups are going to be prioritizing, what action they should be participating in. You see a lot of accusations, so I'll use Eigenlayer, right, around the ways that teams were sibling activity. And you look at that, we're in a post-airdrop ecosystem. The activity on Eigenlayer went down, I'm saying Eigenlayer, I mean Layer 0. So apologies. I'm going to talk shit about Eigenlayer for a different reason later on. Layer 0 transaction activity went down 99.6% after the airdrop happened. So you can look at that one way, it's like, oh, there's a bunch of civils or farmers or people inside of there, but who's the largest beneficiary of a large amount of transactions that are going on inside of any bridge? It's the internal team, right? It's not just necessarily something where they might be financially rewarded and earn a bunch of the token in an ecosystem in an ecosystem project which they designed the rules for and they have initial understanding, but they're also heavily incentivized to make it look as popular as possible ahead of their own TG and their own launches and their investing schedules. So there's misaligned incentives where you might view this in a traditional sense as like stock manipulation or repricing based on insider knowledge. The second thing is how these tokens get distributed when it's not particularly points-based, which is where I'll go to Eigenlayer, where that team is allegedly distributing a list of addresses that are supposed to be targeted by all of the products that are building on top of it to get initial early insider applications. So it's not just, oh, these things are supposedly going to be fair and codified and based around the laws of whatever the point system is. you have to add an asterisk on that, which is, oh, my friends get a bunch of this token because I like them. Not even necessarily for something like owning a pudgy penguin, like what you talked about previously. Sometimes it might just be like, hey, can you add these 10 airdrops to, maximum, or can you add these 10 addresses to like maximal rewards in this airdrop system? Cool, thanks, appreciate it. But it's like, if you're getting told that by somebody higher up in an ecosystem, then you likely follow that. And that is, I think, what you're talking about in the idea of like insiders exiting as a part of this airdrop functionality.
That's what some people say, right?
Allegedly.
Allegedly, what some people say. I mean, let's go back to the whole thing with like good metrics for how to put together a good airdrop, right? Right now it feels that the leaderboard is a way that a lot of these ecosystems, a lot of these protocols gauge, who gets who gets to benefit from an airdrop. Let me ask you this: are leaderboards a really good way to kind of put the information out there so that the community can compete with each other, or are there better alternatives for airdrop mechanics?
I think leaderboards are a terrific way to crystallize the metric that you're trying to optimize for. So I think from that perspective, whether you're trying to make it competitive or not, it doesn't really matter. It's really the clarity of what you want people to do. That is really important. And if you wanted to create a leaderboard in terms of, these validators mined this many blocks, or these traders provided this much liquidity, or these lenders created this much supply into a borrow lending reserve, it doesn't really matter. So I think I do like leaderboards for that reason, because it does force you to be clear and transparent with the rules. I think one of the challenges and one of the reasons why point systems have taken off is because it doesn't require you to go through a one-way door. You maintain a lot of optionality with a point system, where a lot of people are creating startups, they're building stuff that's never been done before, they don't know exactly what they're doing. And so point systems are really attractive because you don't have to lock yourself in necessarily with all the hard things that go into building smart contracts. But at the same time, that's what part of what makes the industry and these systems really special is that, yes, it's really hard to make a smart contract, and it's really hard to design the system correctly, and you're kind of locked in on day one, but it's also what makes it fair. And I think that's like an important consideration for anybody that's opting into a point system versus a more fair kind of on-chain distribution.
Is it really fair, or is it a gamified kind of like structure?
I think when you're saying whether something is fair, you need to make sure that people understand the difference between fair in terms of opportunity versus fair as in equitable to everybody. Everybody has the opportunity to deposit as much capital as they want to, again, a borrow lend protocol, for earning points that are going to eventually become an airdrop. Not everybody has the same access to capital or the same investment there. So you can say, well, the airdrop is linear, it's fair to everybody. All you need to do is have millions of dollars when you get to the top of the leaderboard. That's not equitable to every single person that's going to be inside of there. But it's also not necessarily on the protocol to make sure that you, as a potential user, have the same, result as anybody else. So you'll see a lot of airdrop mechanisms or leaderboard mechanisms or points-based mechanisms which are designed in this idea of like everybody has the same access and the same knowledge of what are the points that you're supposed to be able to hit in order to get as much of a benefit out of this as possible. But that's assuming that every single person has the same access to being able to do X, Y, Z, whatever you're trying to target on these different areas. Some people aren't going to have the social reach comparative to others if you're doing a marketing-based competition. Some people aren't going to be able to take advantage of referral systems comparative to others if they don't have a thriving YouTube channel or something like that, for example. Is that an unfair system just because someone else worked on building up their own social platform versus somebody else? And then you get into the idea of people arguing is like, does the social promotion of something like a referral program, does that actually matter more than capital allocation in terms of what do I need to do to build up the value of my ecosystem or to make number, again, go up into the right? I think that is much more dependent on where teams have their own weak points and what they're trying to solve for. TVL is just a broadly appreciated metric across various ecosystems, and it's something that's very easy to look at for this is a good program, this is a bad program, because one of these is high TVL and one of them doesn't.
I guess here we'll end it with the future, right? So the question I'd like to ask is, are we to see airdrops as a mechanism for companies to create long-term value between now and the next 5 years, or do you think that this industry will come up with a better mechanism than airdrops?
I think the idea of giving people free money for doing nothing will go away.
You're supposed to be positive.
I think, I apologize, but I think that is an absurd concept that has no grounding in reality. And what we will see in the future, I think, is more tooling and much more grounded concepts for value creation in the industry, whether it's token distribution mechanisms like mining inside of smart contracts, whether it's socially agreed upon vesting schedules. The whole concept that you can build anything useful in 2 years is absurd. I'm sure there may be some examples, but if you go raise money in Silicon Valley and build a startup and try to go from 0 to 1 to IPO, that's a process that's going to take you like 10 years or something absurd. To build really important things, it takes a really long time. It takes an insane amount of hard work, and nobody does that at the rate that 99% of tokens get vested. And so I think fundamentally the concept of early liquidity is, on the one hand, why most investors love this space so much, is because it greatly de-risks them. If you talk to a lot of, I wouldn't even call a lot of token investors VCs. They're something like a different category. They're not traditional venture capitalists where they take positions for a very long period of time, go from 0 to 1, build these sustainable institutions that change the world. They're people that are kind of more looking for, they're kind of like traders almost, or they're looking for liquidity and they're looking to make good trades based on good events. But I think this is what creates a lot of the short-termism in the industry. So to answer your question, what is going to happen with airdrops in the future? I think we'll see this problem solved, and when it is solved, the crypto economy will be a much more vibrant, a much more mainstream, a much more value-creating kind of mechanism that the world, I think, kind of can appreciate and care about.
Well, could you take the opposite side and go back to the beginning?
Yeah, I'll start negative and I'll end positive.
Sure.
So if you're going into an airdrop as a mechanism to get a variety of different rewards out to people, whatever that ends up being, you need to understand that the user needs to be protected against itself, especially in an economic cycle. If it is the most cost-efficient thing for me to do to spin up fake Discord and Telegram accounts in the hopes of getting thousands or tens of thousands of dollars inside this, you can't be mad at a user for doing that. That's a system that you've given them that they are responding to in a decent way. There are 800 people who are attending today. The World of Coin folks are over there, obviously with the ability for you to scan your eye, join inside of there. If that's economically incentivized enough, everybody in here should scan their eye and bring as many friends as possible to also scan their own eyes and go in and be participating inside of that, because that's a system that's been created. But at some point, people are going to say, no, this isn't worth it for my time. I'm not necessarily going to be a part of it. And that's the key area that you need to hit on. What you're going to see over the course of the next few years, and something that's a continuing arms race right now between protocol creators and protocol users, is anti-civil defense mechanisms and ways to prove that one person is one person, where it's something of, if I claim that there are 100,000 users on this platform, it's not 1,000 people with 100 wallets apiece who are all utilizing it. It's actually going to be 100,000 people, because we're trying to design on Solana, I would say specifically, something where it's a network that's able to accommodate millions of people simultaneously utilizing significant apps that have decent changes in their daily lives. It's a good 0 to 1 state, right? To utilize what Armani's talking about. In order to get there, we need to prove that any of these applications are actually able to handle a bunch of fake users, so that we know that they're going to eventually be able to handle a bunch of real users. So right now, even when people are faking activity to utilize the processes, you need to have an understanding of what a botter is going to do as a way to potentially project what real users are going to be doing at scale. And we all talk about wanting to bring millions of people to crypto and creating the next killer apps. We're not at those user levels yet. So I'd say that those areas are actually very beneficial to understand, like, how does somebody at a top end of their protocol usage actually react? Is this something that's going to be potentially able to scale to there? And what learnings can you take from a bunch of people trying to buy your protocol to make money? Take those learnings as, okay, how can I build a more sustainable or more incentivized program for real users later on? Once I get, a decade into the building process where, it is going to be at the point where, people are looking at what should these companies be doing or what should these products be doing.
Great. I guess, we're all capital allocators here, but the most important thing I think is we're all in early, right? We don't know what the industry is going to look like in a few years. I think Armani's probably right. I think things are going to have to change for the future. But at least we're here now and we're kind of paving the roads for that. So thank you very much, gentlemen, for being up here and experimenting with us on this debate format. Thank you, audience, for enjoying and listening in.
Thank you very much.